You're listening to the Kelly Green Hour for the Always Next Year Podcast Studio Network. You can find the team on our Twitter at ANY Podcast or visit us on our website, www.alwaysnextyearpodcast.com. And now, to bring us in, the Jackdaws.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to a Carson Wentz contract extension breaking news edition of the Kelly Green Hour here on the Always Next Year podcast. I'm your host, LJ Harrell. Joining me today is Connor. Connor, our guy got his extension, something that me and you have advocated for over the last, couple of months. It's about damn time. How you doing today?
I'm doing great, and you said it. It's about damn time. When I saw that news, I think I was laying in bed, and I looked at my girlfriend, and I was like, "We just signed Carson to an extension," and she didn't get the excitement. But
I don't know if that's something that your girlfriend wants to hear while you guys are like laying in bed together.
She was almost asleep, so just something to excite her before she falls asleep, I guess.
Yeah, it was like 7:30 on Thursday night. I don't even know what I was doing. I was watching. I might have been I don't even know what the heck I was watching. And it popped up across Twitter, and that's when I sent the alert out to our group, our ANYP group message, and I was happy. I thought that Carson would wait until Dak Prescott got his contract so that Carson could get a little bit more. Because let's be real, if you are a non-biased football fan, if you're not, you don't have allegiances to the Eagles, you don't have allegiances to the Cowboys, and you look at Dak Prescott and you look at Carson Wentz, you can see that Carson Wentz is a superior quarterback to Dak Prescott. Dak Prescott is an average quarterback at best. He's a product of Zeke Elliott. He's a product of not having to throw the ball, 50 times a game when you can hand it off to the caliber of a running back of Zeke Elliott. And then you throw a bunch of 5 to 10 yard hitches and passes. You're not throwing anything downfield. It makes you look good. That's why you're 32-16 in 3 years as a starting quarterback. But he hasn't won anything, and he's never going to win anything. And I really hope Jerry Jones gives him a $35 million a year contract because they're overvaluing him. But as an Eagles fan, the contract that Carson Wentz got into, we'll get into the details in a little bit, I think is perfect. It's a perfect setup in how he wins once again.
Absolutely. And I actually, when I was on Twitter before we started this segment, I saw that there was actually a news, kind of an update there about Prescott and the Cowboys. And I guess there was quote unquote really far apart on talks. And I think that it has everything to do with Howie Roseman and what he just did with Carson Wentz. Same with Goff. I guess I read a little update there that they're waiting until the end of this year to work on Goff.
Yeah, not to cut you off, I wouldn't be surprised if the Rams, depending on how this year goes, they move away from Goff because Sean McVay feels that he can implement any quarterback into his system and be successful, which, when you have the caliber of weapons that they have there, with Todd Gurley, with Brandon Cooks, with Cooper Kupp, with that receiving core that they have, he might be right. You can just insert a quarterback and they're going to be successful, score points, and hopefully win games for the Rams.
Absolutely. And you know what? We'll probably just sound like, bitter fans or just your typical Eagles fan on the Wentz side of the debate and not the Goff side. But when we get to the tier maker that we're doing later in the show, I agree with that statement. Goff is a product of Sean McVay. Sean McVay can probably take any quarterback and do what he's doing with Jared Goff. I think so.
I think it's funny you say that. I want to see him do that with their backup quarterback, who is now Blake Bortles, because then if he's able, if something were to happen to Goff, and obviously I don't advocate anything happening to quarterbacks, but if something were to happen to Goff and Bortles had to step in to be the quarterback over Sean Mannion, who I think is their other backup quarterback, if he can work wonders with Blake Bortles, then I would be shocked. I mean, then maybe he's correct in feeling that way in terms of his system being what makes quarterbacks successful.
Oh, I agree. And I mean, anyone who could take Blake Bortles and turn him into a quarterback who can lead like a 10-6 or an 11-5 team, oh, that would be amazing. I mean, I know I don't hate Blake Bortles, and I have a buddy who's a huge Jags fan, and I have picked on him every year for that, and I pick on him for the Foles thing because as much as I wish for Foles' success, I don't know if it's gonna happen. It definitely isn't gonna happen like with the Eagles.
But, when it comes to Nick Foles, I think it does have a lot to do with coaching, and while he does have John DeFilippo there, Doug Marrone is not Doug Peterson, and I don't know if they're going to get the same out of Foles that the Eagles and Doug Peterson were able to get out of Foles.
And he doesn't have weapons. The weapons aren't there.
I mean, they have Leonard Fournette, but their receiving corps, they signed Terrell Pryor. Other than I don't even know.
D.D. Westbrook,
I do like D.D. Westbrook,
Lee and Terrell Pryor and Chris Conley. Those are your 4 receivers.
That's okay. I see where you're coming from.
And then me and another buddy who's a Raiders fan, we were like, you guys got to go tight end at the draft to the Jags fan, because it's like if you watch Eagles football last year, who was Foles' favorite target? Zach Ertz. Yeah. So I mean, you got to have a good tight end that he can throw that ball to or dump off to if he gets in trouble.
Yeah, and they had the 7th pick in the draft, and they took Josh Allen, which, I mean, you can't go wrong with taking somebody that could be considered the best defensive player in the draft. But they had a chance for T.J. Hawkinson, who ended up going to Detroit a pick or two later. It's definitely going to be interesting to see. And we're going to see Nick Foles week 2 or week 3 of the preseason. I can't remember. Whichever game it is, it's going to be a game that the starters are going to play, at least in the first quarter. So we're going to get to see Nick Foles against the Eagles defense. And it's going to be interesting to see. We'll obviously discuss that in the coming months as we get closer to preseason. But when it comes to the Carson Wentz contract extension, it was an extension. It wasn't a brand new contract. So they added 4 years. So it runs through 2024. $128 million, $66 million guaranteed at signing with 107.9 total guarantees. Now, this doesn't kick in until 2021, which means the Eagles are going to be able to put a lot of that extension money into 2019 and 2020. They're roughly $25-ish million under the cap right now. You know, they can put a lot of that extension money into this year. They can put a lot of that extension money into next year, so that when you get to 2021, when the contract starts, his cap number is not going to be $32 million a year. It's going to be in the low 20s, which is going to be great for the Eagles. It's almost like Bryce Harper signing for 13 years instead of 10 years. You open up, you keep cap space available to help build the team for you in the future, so you're not, on the team like what happens with Aaron Rodgers in Green Bay. He is making so much money, but they don't have enough under the cap to put weapons around him. The way this contract is constructed, you got to give Howie Roseman a ton of credit, because they're going to be able to build in the future and bring in weapons to help Carson Wentz.
Oh, exactly. Like, a lot of people are sitting there and they're questioning Wentz's worth. I don't think that needs to be questioned. I think you have to applaud the intelligence of Howie Roseman and what he has done. He's given himself extra years to move money and shuffle money, and he's given himself the opportunity to vote. Like I saw it today, there's 11 offensive players under contract till 2021 now. So that gives him so much more flexibility within the team and with this Wentz contract that people just don't realize. They're too stuck on Carson Wentz and the dollar figure. But it's a product of where the NFL world is going. Look at every big name quarterback who has signed since the Andrew Luck 2016 signing. Every year it goes up, it goes up, it goes up, it goes up. That's just a product of the business the NFL's in.
And that's the product of the quarterback position. The quarterback position is the most important position in all of sports. A lot of people will claim goalie is up there, but if you do not have a suitable quarterback, there are those rare times, a Trent Dilfer taking the Ravens. I think it was Trent Dilfer taking the Ravens to the Super Bowl, or Rex Grossman taking the Bears to the Super Bowl. And there are those very rare occasions where the defense is going to lead you. But if you do not have a quarterback that can perform adequately in the NFL, you are not going to win games. And it's really important when you have a quarterback and a coach that have a connection, that have, a chemistry like Doug Peterson and like Carson Wentz have. Because if you don't have that, they're not going to, trust each other on game day, and they're not going to be able to, and the quarterback's not going to be able to execute the game plan to help you win games. So I think what the Eagles have going for them right now is exactly what you look for in a NFL organization.
Oh, absolutely. It goes without saying that, like, even when we had Nick Foles and Peterson was coaching up Nick Foles, and you could see it in games, it was the same way. The relationship he has with his quarterbacks is just exceptional. It's the way that he works with them. He knows they're his most valuable asset and his most valuable player on the field, and that they need to be working together as a unit, coach and quarterback at all times for this team to win and for this team to go to the Super Bowl and do what they did.
Yeah, and I think it helps that, over the OTA periods, the 3 phases, that Carson Wentz has looked really good. Now, of course, they're not in pads. They're not playing really against the defense. They're going against air most of the time. But he's looked healthy. He's not wearing a brace. His arm looks lively. Him and Deshaun Jackson have a connection that, that's going to scare defenses. It's going to be like when Deshaun first got here with Donovan. It's going to be fun to watch. And if Carson can stay healthy, we say this every time we do a Kelly Green Hour. If Carson Wentz can stay healthy, there's no limit to where this team can go.
Oh, exactly. I mean, it's not even just Deshaun Jackson. It's the whole, like I hear about Arcega-Whiteside and the connection that they have, and Dallas Goedert and Zach Ertz. The connections there from previous years. The connections there with Jeffrey. Just this connection he's building with all these new weapons around him. And Goddard, who's an old weapon, but kind of still working together and working with each other. The fact that he's building this rapport and these amazing relationships in the OTAs, it's going to be scary to see what he can do on the field. The defenses can try and predict who he's going for, but he can pass that ball to anyone, and I think he's going to be able to do wonders with them.
Yeah, and you remember before the 2017 season when he was 11-2, was pretty much on his way to winning the regular season MVP before he tore his ACL against the Rams. In that offseason, he was able to bring his receivers with him to North Dakota. They were able to go hunting together. They were able to run routes. They were able to, they played basketball. They had camaraderie. Last year, he had to rehab his knee. So he wasn't able to do any of that stuff. This year, as healthy as, he can be with the quote-unquote back injury that he came into the offseason with. But, he's been able to, instead of rehabbing his knee, he's been able to go out there and run and throw passes to his receivers. He's been able to do all these things to get that camaraderie. And you can see how happy he is. You can see the weight that's lifted off of his shoulders whenever he does an interview. And now that he has the contract, it's not something that fans and media are going to talk about now. It's done. It's over with. Now they can focus on football and focus on winning football games.
Well, I mean, I still think people are going to talk about it because I've heard a lot of people talking about how he's not worth it or it's a risk. And you know what? It definitely is a risk, but it's a risk worth taking because you have an potentially MVP caliber quarterback throwing that football. And if we didn't get that contract done this year, if we waited, that if he had an MVP caliber season like he did in 2017, we'd be paying the first $40 million a year quarterback. And we'd still be having the same discussion. Is he better than Wilson? Is he worth Wilson? Because that's the discussion I hear a lot of right now. No, as of right now, no. But exponentially, this is where the quarterback market is going. Whether or not Dak Prescott's going to get more money than Russell Wilson. Is he worth more?
Hell no.
Absolutely not.
And you think about it, Patrick Mahomes is going to get paid next year. He's probably going to become the first $40 million a year quarterback. Now, after the year he had last year where he won the regular season MVP, he had a fantastic second year. Is he going to continue that? We don't know. But like you said it right. There's a risk whenever you give a contract out to any quarterback in the NFL. When Aaron Rodgers got his quarterback, what happened week 1 last year? Khalil Mack almost tore his ACL. Khalil Mack almost broke, the knee or tore the ACL of Aaron Rodgers, it didn't look like he was going to be able to play. He came back in the second half, led them to a win, but he could barely walk. If you look at all the quarterbacks that are making all this money, they're the most vulnerable on the field. I mean, as much as the NFL tries to protect the quarterbacks with a lot of rules that I can't agree with most of them, but the quarterbacks are the most important investment on a football team. So you're going to give them all that money, but there's going to be that risk for anybody. Carson Wentz, Aaron Rodgers, Drew Brees, it doesn't matter. Russell Wilson, it doesn't matter who you give the money to. There's a risk of them getting hurt. You just have to hope that that player is smart and doesn't put themselves in a position to get hurt.
And honestly, it's not even just the quarterback. Look at the deals that were given, like the deal that was given to Todd Gurley. All the money invested in him, and now he has to take a much smaller role in the offense because of everything that happened. Look at Khalil Mack and the amount of money he's getting paid. He could just as easily go down with an ACL tear as Carson Wentz did. It was a freak accident. Carson Wentz in the air, two people come together on his knee. How often is that going to happen? How many times are you going to jump through the air and have that happen? Like, it's just a freak accident. And I understand people calling him injury prone because of the back situation, which I heard some people say the fracture might have come from rushing back and with his knee injury and his body trying to compensate. So you just don't know. Is he injury prone? Maybe. Was it a freak accident? Maybe. And we just had the biggest steal of the decade as far as a contract goes. Who knows?
Yeah. Because he even said it that if he were to go out and outperform his contract over the next 3-4 years, it's not going to matter to him, because that means A, they're probably winning football games, B, probably winning championships, and C, they're going to be able to put pieces around him because he's not going to be taking up a large percentage of the cap. Obviously, the cap keeps going up, so the Eagles aren't going to have to worry about, until he's 31, they're not going to have to worry about giving him another contract. And you're right, it was a freak thing. He was on WIP, I want to say like a month-ish ago, and Angelo Cataldi asked him, he said, are you unlucky or with these injuries? Are you injury prone? And he said he was unlucky, and I agree with him, because you talked about the game against the Rams. How many times is a quarterback going to get hit in their knee like that? He was trying to make a play. If your quarterback is going to go down or go out of bounds like DeMarco Murray did in that one game instead of going for the first down, I don't know if I want that player on the field for me. But if I have somebody that's going out there and giving it his all and trying to put points on the board, trying to get first downs, that's the quarterback that I want on the field. That's the player that I want on the field, and that's who I want leading my team.
Absolutely, and that I agree completely, because that's who we want on the field. He's made a career with the Eagles of putting it all on the field and doing that and staying healthy. Like, usually you're planting a foot and someone hits your knee and that's your ACL tear, or you're making a aggressive cut flying through the air like that, and then everyone suddenly calls him injury prone. I don't agree. I think the back fracture was a product of rushing back from the knee. The knee was a freak accident. We can argue this and we can defend this, and we're Eagles fans, so we're obviously going to be on the side it's just a freak accident. But I don't think he's injury prone. I honestly do not. I think he's just unlucky, exactly as Angelo worded the question.
Yeah, I don't think he's injury prone either. He got injured in college, and his first training camp he broke his ribs, but he ended up playing that entire year. A freak accident his second year, and then last year he was overcompensating by coming back earlier than he probably should have, even though I was pushing for him to come back week 1. Was I wrong in that? Most likely, but I thought he could have come back week 1. And then he hurt his back because he really wasn't able to do everything that he wanted to do because maybe he didn't trust his knee. And that's the thing. When you have ACL injuries, and Shane says this all the time, it's a trust thing. It's a mental thing. And a lot of doctors say, it takes more than a year for you to actually feel right. And now that it's been more than a year, over a year and a half since the injury and since the surgery, he's going to get back to himself when this season starts. And, the sky is the limit for him, and the sky is the limit for this offense.
You can just see it in the videos out of OTAs and stuff. He looks That the way he's moving in some drills is not the look of a man who had an ACL tear, who's coming off an ACL tear. That man is on a mission, and I think that we just got a steal. I mean, I know a lot of people are like, "Oh, you can't do it this way," but when you break down the contract across 6 years, we're paying him like $25.6 million a year. It's a complete steal. We're paying him the same as the Raiders are paying Derek Carr essentially, but if you spread it across 6 years.
Yep, and it's going to be fun. Actually, I have, sorry. So, like, looking at what the quarterbacks, the highest paid quarterbacks in the NFL on their average here, Russell Wilson is making 35. Ben Roethlisberger is making 34 million. Aaron Rodgers 33.5. Matt Ryan 30. Kirk Cousins is making 28 million. Jimmy Garoppolo, what has he done in his career? 27.
He's played like what, 6 NFL games?
It's something like that.
He hasn't even played a game on this new contract.
He's 27.5 million. Matt Stafford, who hasn't won a playoff game, I think, or maybe he's won one, $27 million. Derek Carr, a little over 25 million. Drew Brees, 25 million, which I feel like that number went up. I don't know if this is totally accurate what I'm looking at on overthecap.com in terms of quarterback, but this has him at 24. Andrew Luck at 24.594. Alex Smith at 23.5, and he's hurt for this year. Who knows if his career is over or not. Joe Flacco at a little over 22 million, and Nick Foles I'll stop at. He's at 22 million. You know, you look at that list, there's maybe 4, maybe 5 quarterbacks that you would consider at this very moment in time right now, you know, that you would probably take over Carson Wentz, but, you know, it's not a lot of quarterbacks that, you know, Patrick Mahomes, Tom Brady, maybe, but if you were to put age into it and expand, you know, and think about future years, would you take Brady over Wentz? Rodgers, maybe, Breeze, maybe, but Wentz is a top tier quarterback in the NFL, regardless of what other people say.
I absolutely agree. Do I think he's elite or not yet? I think he's still got a bit more to prove, but he's definitely up there. I definitely want him on my football team, and I think people would be crazy to look at an ACL tear and a back injury, stress fracture in his back as a reason not to give him a chance, especially what we invested in him and all these people crying that we're paying too much and we should have moved on. We invested so much, not just dollars, but in draft capital and in time and in coaching and working with this guy. Why would you want to give up based off of a freak accident and an overcompensating injury?
Exactly. And then you would have to start over. You know, again, him getting a contract is not being held over his head. It's not being held over the organization's head. You know, now they can go out and play football and focus on, you know, improving the football team. You know, and now you don't have to wait until a Dak Prescott or a Jared Goff gets a contract. And then the debate goes, now should Carson Wentz get more than them? Should he get about the same as them? Or should he get under? Like, there's so many things that they have avoided now by getting the contract done and over with, that they put themselves in a very, very good spot for now and for the future.
And it takes a ton of stress off of Wentz. Imagine if you're the Rams and you're Jared Goff right now. The mentality when you're playing for a contract, unless you're Le'Veon Bell who just decides to sit out.
Yeah.
Like a Jared Goff, imagine the mental game that plays against you. You know you have to play. You're playing for money. Like, you can sit back and say, well, I took us to a Super Bowl and put 3 points on the board. or you look back, you know that if the team's putting it off, they're going to look at this year and they're going to say, if we don't make the playoffs, or if, say, we get bounced in the wild card round, do you think he's going to make as much as coming off of a Super Bowl year? Like, there's a lot of mental game to it. And I think that just spares Carson the mental game of saying, I'm playing for a contract, and every day trying to overcompensate himself to get that contract, when he can just focus on the game, play the game, get the wins, get the Super Bowl, get to the playoffs.
I definitely agree with you. So on Twitter, when it came out, when the details of the deal came out, I put out, okay, Eagles fans, Carson Wentz gets a 4-year, $128 million extension with $107 million guaranteed, the most in NFL history. What are your thoughts? Good deal? Bad deal? Just right? Let us know what you think in preparation for our segment this evening. One of Ken Gilbert. Oh, breaking news before I get to that, the Jets have hired Joe Douglas as their new GM. It's official.
Wow.
He left. And I think they did that because the Texans fired their GM, and if the Jets didn't hire him, the Texans probably would have hired Joe Douglas. It's very sad to see Joe Douglas go. Now it's really on Howie Roseman to continue what him and Douglas were doing over the last couple of years.
Wow, this definitely got a lot more interesting. Yeah, as soon as the Texans fired their GM, you guarantee the Jets said, "Name your number," and that was that.
They were apparently $1 million apart, and for an NFL franchise, $1 million isn't nothing. So they're smart. I'm shocked that Joe Douglas went to the Jets under that chaotic nature that's there, because I don't know if I would trust Adam Gase, even though that they have a relationship. So it'll be interesting to see. Obviously we wish Joe Douglas well, except when playing the Eagles, but I don't think he's going to have much success in New York.
It's definitely a tougher situation to be in. He really has the opportunity to show if he's like Howie Roseman or better than Howie Roseman. But we at this point will say no, he isn't.
Yeah, and
best of luck, but no, you're not.
It's going to be interesting to see who, or if he's able to take anybody from the Eagles. Andy Weidel, who came over here with him a couple years back. So it's definitely going to be interesting to see. But let's get back to this Carson Wentz talk. So that's going to be something that we'll probably dive into next week when we do when we do another Kelly Green Hour outside of the whole Carson Wentz talk. All right, so let me reread the tweet. Eagles fans, Carson Wentz gets his 4-year, $128 million extension with $107 million guaranteed. What are your thoughts? Good deal, bad deal, just right. Ken Gilbert at Ken Gilbert 2 said it was a necessary deal. Only time will tell if it's good or bad. I kind of agree with that. I wish I probably shouldn't have said just right. I should have just left it at good deal or bad deal. But I understand where Ken is coming from. It is necessary. Again, if they would have waited and Carson Wentz had a 2017-like season, you're paying him $40 million a year instead of $30 million a year.
Absolutely. One of the words in my notes that I put was necessary. It was necessary and perfect timing. It had to happen, like we just said a little while ago. If he puts up an MVP caliber year, it's a race to beat Mahomes for a contract. Because once Mahomes gets his contract, Wentz would be like, well, I was the MVP this year, so I deserve his money or better. So we don't want to have that debate. This is perfect. It was necessary.
Yeah, you're right. Definitely necessary. Let's see, Anthony at SJ300man said just right. I agree. Chris Snyder at Spot's House, he likes to comment on a lot of our things. He had a different view. He said too much money, way too much money. 22 per year tops. Has not been healthy. You could always add incentives. Can't guarantee that much money. It better pay off.
This made me laugh because you were going back and forth with him last night.
I was going back and forth. I told him I disagreed. This is the going rate for quarterbacks in the NFL. And when, not if, but when he has a similar year to 2017, he would cost $40 million a year. This was a smart deal. And he goes 23-17 as a starter and no playoff experience, high potential, health risk, major health risk. And I says, you can't be thinking of the negatives. He's an elite level quarterback. The Eagles aren't worried about any of that. You shouldn't be either. And he finishes off with elite potential, sure. We saw it 2 years ago. It's not negative. It's logic, really. Hope it works out. Until proven, this stands as ouch. I disagree with him, obviously, because, again, you don't play with it. When it comes to your franchise quarterback, you don't play. You don't leave him in limbo. And you don't think of the negatives. Just play, or just give him his money. Something that you guys can come to an agreement with, which they came to an agreement, a smart agreement. He's not going to keep the Eagles cash strapped in the future. This was a very smart deal.
I agree. I understand where he's coming from. I get the logic. I mean, you dig into the numbers. You know what? Dak Prescott has a career better QBR than Carson Wentz, I'm pretty sure. So, I mean, if you dig into the numbers, you can dig into the numbers all you want and you can say it's logic and you can find the stats, but you can't live and die by the stats. I mean, I get where he's coming from. I understand the logic point. I disagree completely. I think it was like we've been saying, it's necessary. It was the right time. $22 million is around where Nick Foles is getting paid. You think Carson Wentz is worth Nick Foles, or like some backups are getting bordering on that type of money. So you think he's worth that type of money, he will walk from us in a heartbeat. That's an insult to a starting quarterback to throw out $22 million like that.
I definitely agree, because he's, as I mentioned before, Russell Wilson 35, Ben Roethlisberger 34 a year. You have to be smart, obviously, when it comes to the cap, but you don't want to low blow. I don't know if low blow's the low ball. Excuse me. You're a quarterback who you say is your franchise quarterback, because if you say he's your franchise quarterback and then you offer $22 million, there's mixed signals there. And you're right. He could, once his contract's up, he could just bounce. And if he goes somewhere else and shows that potential that we believe he has and wins football games, you're sitting there scratching your head being like, we messed up. And you don't want to have that. When you have a chance, when you have as good as a team as the Eagles have, and you have a chance to win not just one Super Bowl, but multiple Super Bowls, you keep it together as long as possible.
And you just have to think about what we invested in it. If it was just one of our own draft picks, we invested no draft capital whatsoever. You know what? Okay, go ahead. Test the waters. If you really want to be that guy to low blow your quarterback and throw $22 million, go ahead. It's your own draft capital. But we invested by trading for capital and saying this is our franchise quarterback. So we would never in a million years consider anything less than $25 million, anything less than Andrew Luck or Derek Carr. You just can't. We invested in him in every other way but financially. And now the time has come where we have to invest financially for our franchise quarterback.
Yeah, and now since we got the contract out the way, you can just sit back and look at what Jerry Jones is going to do with Dak Prescott. Now, as you mentioned earlier, they're far apart on the contract, but if terms come out when they do agree on one and he's getting paid 33, 34, 35 million a year, we can laugh, because they have to pay him, they have to pay Zeke, they have to pay Amari Cooper, they have to pay Byron Jones, they just paid Big Mouth DeMarcus Lawrence. They're not going to be able to keep that team together, and they're going to be cash strapped, in a year, into 2 and 3 years, and they're going to be at the bottom of the division while the Eagles are winning divisions, getting to the playoffs, going to NFC championship games, and hopefully winning Super Bowls.
Yeah, I mean, for them, awesome job. You built a team to win now, but at the end of the day, when it comes down to getting business done, and you haven't even thought of the ones that are coming in 3 years, like Leighton Vander Esch and stuff,
and Jalen Smith.
They're stuck for years and years. They're gonna have to allow some of these people to walk, and they're gonna be stuck. You might be able to get your Zeke and your Dak, but that might be all you have. You lose all the offensive line because they're all gonna be due for some money. You're going to lose a bunch of your defense because they're all due for money. It doesn't matter how much the cap goes up, which I think it goes up traditionally about $10 million a year. Mm-hmm. It would take about 10 years for them to open up enough space to get all the people that are there now.
And I like you mentioned that they've built a team to win now. What have they won? They won 2 playoff games, if that? They haven't won anything, and they're not going to win anything if they keep Jason Garrett as their head coach, which I want them to give him a lifetime contract, which I think this is going to be his last year, because I don't think they're winning the division at all. And if they make the playoffs, they're going one and done. Then the talk becomes, can they pry Sean Payton away from the Saints? But yeah, if the longer that they keep Jason Garrett there, the less worried I am about the Eagles' chances of making playoffs, because Doug Peterson is a superior coach to Jason Garrett. All Jason Garrett does better is clap and chew gum. That's about it.
He is a damn good clapper. Damn good.
All right, so before we finish this off, 2 other things I want to do. We're going to do our NFC QB tier maker, and we're not going to do all the tiers. We're going to stick with elite, borderline elite, and above average. And then we'll have a quick couple minutes talk about Donovan McNabb. Do we think he's a Hall of Famer? Do we think he should get in the Hall of Fame? Do we think he will get in the Hall of Fame? But let's do the quarterbacks. Let's start at the above average tier. Who do you have in your above average tier at the quarterback position?
My above average tier, I did 5, 5, and 5. So my above average was Jared Goff, Derek Carr, Cam Newton, Deshaun Watson, and Baker Mayfield.
Okay. I didn't do as much as you. I have on my above average Matt Ryan, Ben Roethlisberger, Phillip Rivers, and Deshaun Watson. They're above average. I probably could put Cam Newton in that, but I think I'm going with right now. I'm not going over career. And I think that with the injuries and whatnot, I think his career might be taking a toll downwards. So I have him as an average quarterback right now. I do like Cam Newton, but I don't have him there. What about your borderline elite?
My borderline elite, I have Andrew Luck, Patty Mahomes, Carson Wentz, and I have Phillip Rivers and Matt Ryan because I think Rivers and Ryan are just that elusive playoff run away from being elite, but it's so elusive. They haven't been able to get there. And I mean, look at what Phillip Rivers has. I mean, you put Carson Wentz on that team and like you should win. And that's why I don't understand how Rivers can't get the win with the team there.
Yeah, I agree with that. My borderline elite, I have Carson Wentz, Patrick Mahomes, only because I think he's going to be an elite quarterback, but he's done it for 1 year. So I'm going to, give him something, like let him play a little bit. And then Andrew Luck, he missed the full year. I was in the wrong because when that draft came out, I thought that RG3 was going to be a better quarterback than him. I was wrong. I can admit it. But I have him in the borderline elite right now. But with who the heck is the Colts coach now? I believe I can't remember. Who's the Colts coach? Why can't I remember?
Oh my! The name's slipping my mind.
Oh my! It's so bad.
It's terrible.
He's the Eagles. He was the Eagles' offensive coordinator. Oh my God! I cannot believe I can't remember this. But with them together, they're going. He has a chance to become an elite quarterback.
The way he runs that offense is just so it's exceptional. I like the way he runs
Frank
it.
Reich. Frank Reich. I can't believe. Sorry.
Reich. There you
go.
There you go. Like the way they run that offense is great. The way they use all the weapons that they have, it's impressive. It's very. I find it very similar to the Eagles, obviously, because he came from a Philadelphia Eagles system. Yep. But so similar in the way that they all the movement that they do and all the plays that they're able to do and the size of the playbook that they must have.
Yeah, and he is smart. I mean, he went to Stanford, so obviously he's smart. He played in a pro offense in college, and it doesn't. He's like Peyton Manning almost to an extent. And he can pretty much run his own offense just like Carson Wentz. And at the elite level, who do you have?
So I kind of went based on now and a bit of the career. So I went Tom Brady, Drew Brees, Aaron Rodgers, Russell Wilson, and I put Ben Roethlisberger in the elite category. And I know that he isn't there in many, but I mean, he's proven he can take a team there and win a championship. So
I agree. I mean, I see why you would have him up there. I probably should have had him in the borderline elite. He's probably he's better than an above average.
Yeah, I definitely think he's above average. I definitely think he's better than the guys you named and the guys we named. But
yeah. All right, so my elite, I have Brady, Brees, Rodgers, and Wilson. I mean, it's kind of, you look at it. It's there. And then let's look at the quarterbacks in the NFC East real quick. Dak Prescott, I have as an average quarterback. He will never be anything above average.
Yeah, I think he's an average quarterback. Like you said, he's a product of Zeke. Mm-hmm. When we saw those games when Zeke was suspended, like, he was terrible. He was horrible. He couldn't connect on anything. There was a point there where he went a streak of games without even throwing a touchdown.
And didn't he go for a streak where he didn't throw for 200 yards?
I think he had a lot of streaks. I mean,
a lot of bad streaks.
I see on Twitter a lot of Cowboys fans say, look at the QBR, look at the QBR. We can look at the QBR all you want. Go ahead. We can look at ratings. We can look at stats all day. But if Carson Wentz was still healthy that year that we went to the Super Bowl, I have no doubts he would have carried us to that Super Bowl just like Nick Foles did.
I've always made the argument in their rookie years when Dak went 13-3 with a pretty stacked team, while Wentz went 7-9 with no weapons. If you would have switched the quarterbacks, Dak Prescott would not have went 7-9 in Philly. They would have went 5-11. Carson Wentz probably would have went 13-3, and he would have led them to a Super Bowl. That's how much I do it by the eye test.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, you look at it. I think if you put Dak Prescott, you take him and you put him in a system like, let's say, what's a system that a bad system to be in that you'd want it, like the Jaguars. Let's take the Jaguars by example.
Or the Jets.
Dak Prescott would probably resemble Blake Bortles in that offense. The Jets too, same thing. I think he'd resemble a Blake Bortles-esque quarterback if he was put in a system where he didn't have the weapons around him.
I definitely agree with you. he's still, even with Amari Cooper, he still has a really bad deep ball. Yeah, he threw for over 400 yards against the Eagles when we were down to our fifth and sixth string cornerbacks, and they had to go to OT after the refs robbed us on that opening kickoff. Like, while a lot of Cowboy fans say, well, that didn't matter, it was the first play of the game. Well, it changes the entire momentum of the game because, A, the Eagles get the ball inside the 15, inside the 10-yard line, and even if they get a field goal, we're talking about an offense last year that could not score in the first quarter. They put points on the board in the first quarter. It gives them momentum, and it allows and it puts a dent in Dallas, and they start thinking, oh my God, here we go again. We're about to screw up and lose a game that we shouldn't lose.
Absolutely. That game, that play still gives me nightmares.
I'm so frustrating because it's plain as clear. It's plain as day. There's 5 Eagles around the ball. Kamugu Hill comes out of the pile with the ball. How you not say that the Eagles got the ball is beyond me. All right, so before we finish off here, Donovan McNabb. He opened his mouth. I'm a huge Donovan fan. I'll say that I'm a big Donovan fan. Best quarterback in Eagles history. He said that he's a Hall of Famer, and I think they were talking about Eli Manning, and it was on TMZ Sports, I think, when this came up. Do you think he should be a Hall of Famer, and do you think he will be a Hall of Famer?
I just want to throw it out there. You said let's talk NFC East quarterback.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
Really, the only one we're talking about?
I'm so sorry. I totally forgot where we were going. Okay, Eli Manning. He's you know what? Right now he's below average.
He's below average, but I mean, if we were to look at a career, I mean, he's done wonders. It's just the last couple of years his career was just decimated. This is a man who just needs to realize when his time is up, when his career is up.
He's taking up a large percentage of the Giants' cap too, and they drafted Daniel Jones, which that's a totally different discussion because that was a terrible pick. Regardless of what anybody says, at number 6, that was an awful pick. Right now, and obviously if you talk career, maybe he's an average quarterback. Yeah, he did win 2 Super Bowls, but other than that, whenever he went to the playoffs, they never won a game. But yeah, you can. I'm trying to figure out. You can blow at him and he falls down and curls up in a ball. He doesn't want to be touched.
I mean, it doesn't help the offensive line he has. I bet Carson Wentz would probably be 2 or 3 ACL tears deep in his career if he was behind that line. That line is painful. And
I sort of kind of feel bad for Saquon Barkley, maybe a little bit.
It's wasted talent, ultimately. It's a wasted talent.
Do you think now, obviously they would never say this publicly, but do you think they regret not taking Sam Darnold last year?
Yeah, they'll never publicly admit it, but from just our perspective and our eyes, I would say yes, I would regret that decision because you're just wasting Barkley. Each year is just going to be more waste, and he's probably going to have this stellar career with exceptional numbers. I think Barkley has a chance to have a Hall of Fame career, and what is he going to be remembered for? Put in a horrible team on his back and trying to carry them to sub 500 records.
Yeah, not winning anything. I agree with you. Now let's go to the Redskins. We can clump them all. Dwayne Haskins, Case Keenum, Colt McCoy, Alex Smith.
I guess I'm interested in this room because I want to see if Dwayne Haskins gets the job. I don't think he has it in week 1, but I think he has it at some point in the season.
Oh, he will have it at some point because they're going to be bad, and you're going to want to see what you have in Dwayne Haskins. I don't think Dwayne Haskins is any good, personally. And they don't really have weapons there. They have Darius Geis, who was coming off of an ACL. They have Adrian Peterson at running back. They have they drafted Bryce Love, who's also coming off of an ACL. Their receivers, they have McLaren, who they drafted out of Ohio State. Doxson, who they drafted a couple years back out of TCU. They don't really have much weapons. Their offensive line, their best offensive lineman wants to be traded, in Trent Williams. That team is a disgrace right now, and I think this could be it for Gruden if he doesn't figure things out. And it'll hurt them if Dwayne Haskins isn't the quarterback they think he's going to be.
Oh, definitely. I mean, it goes without saying that it would really hurt them. And I mean, you look at the money they've invested in quarterbacks, and Keenum is we know Keenum. He's a below average quarterback in my eyes. And Smith is an average quarterback at best. And at this point, tough to say what's going to happen.
Yeah. Their defense is usually decent too. I mean, they got Landon Collins. They have a bunch of Bama guys on that defense, so their defense is gonna be good. I mean, they lost.
I don't think they're as far off as we think.
Offensively,
but there's some things. Offensively, there's some things that need fixing, and they don't want to waste talent for too long, especially on that defense. Like you said, they were without Landon Collins. That defense was still an above-average defense given the circumstances of the team.
And I don't think Landon Collins is an in-the-box safety. So it's going to be interesting to see, if that defense can keep them in the football games until they can get the offense straightened out, figured out before they get things rolling. Sorry, I can't believe I forgot about the rest of the NFC East teams because the other two they're going to be in third and fourth place, and we all know that this is a 2-team race this year. Now let's get to Donovan McNabb, Hall of Famer. Yes, in your opinion, is he a Hall of Famer? And then will he get inducted into the Hall of Fame?
I say no, he isn't a Hall of Famer, and I say no, he doesn't get inducted into the Hall of Fame either. I get who he's comparing himself to and why he's comparing himself to him from a statistical standpoint, but like we said, statistics don't tell the whole story. And at the end of the day, Eli Manning has championships. He has things that he can vouch for. He has not as good of numbers, but he has championships. And he has the ability to say, I took my team there. Whereas a Donovan McNabb can say, I took my team to the playoffs and we won games, but never actually got anything beyond that. Mm-hmm. So I say no and no.
I say he should be, but he won't be. Warren Moon's in the Hall of Fame, and I think he's a better quarterback than Warren Moon, has better numbers than Warren Moon. And if people tell me that they included all the other leagues that Warren Moon is in, you can't, because it's the NFL Hall of Fame. It's not a pro football, in terms of CFL, AFL, all these other leagues. Like if it was basketball, a basketball Hall of Fame is not just the NBA. It's all of basketball. But this is the NFL Pro Football Hall of Fame. I personally would put Donovan in, and I'm not being biased because he's my favorite Eagle quarterback of all time. But I just don't see it happening when you have to talk about you being in the Hall of Fame instead of sitting back and others talking for you. It's most likely not going to happen. So I don't think it's going to happen for Donovan, unfortunately. He's obviously the best quarterback in Eagles history. His 1 year with a legit receiver, they went to the Super Bowl. If they would have gotten him weapons early in his career, they would have went to multiple Super Bowls and they may have won one. That 2014, we shouldn't have had to wait until 2000. Shouldn't have had to wait till the 2017, 2018 team to win a Super Bowl. They should have had multiple Super Bowls by now. That 1991 team, which the defense was number one across the board in every defensive category, but they lost Randall Cunningham that year. That hurt because that year they were Super Bowl caliber team. 2000, one of those 2001, 2, 3, 4 teams, they were Super Bowl caliber teams. They should have had multiple Super Bowls by now. It's not all on Donovan that they didn't win. Andy Reid deserves a big blame for that. Not having weapons, the receivers not being able to get off the line of scrimmage against Carolina in those NFC Championship games. That was frustrating. And then, he had his fair share. That interception he threw against Tampa Bay, that was a bad play. So while he didn't have much help and some blame gets put on him, in my opinion, he should be in, but he won't get in.
Yeah, I see where you're coming from there, and that he should get in. There are some in there that don't have championships, and you can argue for the way he carried the team and stuff that maybe he should be in the Hall of Fame. But like you said it best. If you have to be the one arguing for your Hall of Fame induction, you're probably not going to make it, because the people who should be arguing for your Hall of Fame induction and control that fate are not arguing for it.
Yep, I agree with you. All right, so before we finish off here, final thoughts on the Carson Wentz extension.
Necessary and perfect timing. I think it's all great, and they've completely reset the market for quarterbacks like Dak Prescott and Jared Goff, And well, we all knew Patty Mahomes was getting paid.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that the market just as it resets every single time, it just reset again. And we got in at a good time. And for those arguing that is he worth Russell Wilson? No, but it's the market. This is how it's going to be, and it's going to continue to be this way. Like, is Prescott worth Wilson? Oh, 100% not. Is he worth Wentz? Oh, absolutely not. Is he going to get paid better than both of them? More than likely.
And I hope so, because that means Dallas is going to regret it in a few years and then not be able to pay anybody else. My final thoughts, it was the perfect, like you said, it was the right time. And, Howie Roseman deserves a ton of credit because the way he set the contract up, it's looking like it's $32 million a year, but it's not going to be $32 million a year. It's going to be like the Bryce Harper contract with the Phillies, where they could have just signed him for 10 years and it would have been $33 million a year, but the average annual value came down to about $25 million a year. He's going to get paid around $25 million a year. That's what's going to count against the cap, which means they can get players to help him out in the future. Carson Wentz, best football is ahead of him, and the Eagles are going to be happy with this. Carson Wentz is going to be happy with this, and the fans will be happy with this because he's going to win us a Super Bowl or multiple Super Bowls.
Absolutely. I agree. That it's just the magic. Howie Roseman is the king of cap. He just is, and people don't realize that this flexibility is so much more than they realize it to be for that cap and this contract.
Yep, and he's like Joe Banner, because Joe Banner was really good with the cap back in the Andy Reid days. It's going to be good, and mandatory training camp starts next week. And our next Kelly Green Hour, we are going to discuss the camp. We're going to discuss Malcolm Jenkins, because he's probably not going to show up. And now that they got Carson taken care of, could they be thinking about getting Malcolm Jenkins taken care of? We'll look at the roster. We'll see bright spots. We'll see, the biggest competition. And we'll talk Joe Douglas, because Joe Douglas has signed a 6-year deal to become the new GM of the New York Jets. Connor's Twitter is at Connor10. That's Connor TEN. My Twitter at LJ Harrell, HARRELL 54. And the Always Next Year podcast Twitter is at ANY Podcast. If you have anything you want us to discuss in terms of the Eagles, let us know. Message either one of us. Message the ANY Podcast. If you want to come be a guest on our show, let us know. We'll get you on. Me and Connor can talk football all day, every day. For Connor, I'm LJ. We're going to give it off to the Jackdaws and thank them for bringing us in and getting us out here of the Always Next Year podcast studios. For Connor, I'm LJ. This has been the Kelly Green Hour.
This has been a production of the Always Next Year Podcast Network. You can subscribe to our podcast on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher Radio, Spotify, Spreaker, and SoundCloud. Please also remember to rate and review this podcast to validate our members' life choices. We appreciate it. This is AMYP, signing off.